Yeah, hello. Hi, guys.
Welcome everybody to Hope for Our Time. And guess who my guest is today? My guest is David Tal. David, so great to have you with me. It's been over a month since you've been with me.
Hi, Diane.
Yeah,
Hi,
it's been a
Bas.
while, and I'm glad to be here. And I'm going to say, like,
Yeah, guys, I had yesterday off. I've got to have one day off a week so I can get things done and spend a bit of time with Gabe. So I usually have one day off a week, but the blood clots and that have caused me to go here and there. But I'm back to normal now. But I will take one day off a week so I can spend some time with Gabe.
it seems like there was a whole Bible chapter written between the last time we talked and today. I mean, so much has happened that, okay, let's go.
A lot has happened. And by the way, before I forget, so David is going to be joining me in Santa Barbara coming up in just about 5 or 6 weeks, August 9th and 10th.
Diane, I actually missed streaming with you guys. If it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't even bother streaming.
Santa Barbara, and I'll be staying over for Sunday up there also. But it's
Okay, I don't know the guest David Tao.
James Ganese going to be joining us. How about that, David? I know you know all this. Pastor Brandon Holthouse going to be joining us. It's going to be a great time. You can check it out at the events page of Hope for Our Times to register.
Okay. For everybody who knows you and everybody who knows me, just use your imagination and think about me and Pastor Tom and Pastor Cadiz and Pastor Brandon on the same stage together. I mean, just think of the energy on that one.
It's gonna be so exciting. I can't wait for it. Oh, by the way, I forgot this. I have a new Experience Israel video that was just posted the other day, everybody. It was on Capernaum.
Okay, Bas, watch what happens when I try to get into Discord. All right, let's just go to Discord. There's Discord. There's you there, Vast. So there's you there. Oh, there's your blue one. No, that's what it does when I press your blue one. And it's your blue one you talk on the most. So there's that. Then trying to do Diane. Misfits for Jesus. Press that. Oh, man, looks. Yeah, I can't. Yeah. I don't think I can get in at Misfits for Jesus. Press that. Misfits for Jesus. Yeah, I don't know. I'll work it out. You know me with electronics, guys. I'm pretty spazzo on them.
And I think you're really going to love it. But to get there, you'll see the description and click on the link. And you got over to Experience Israel with Tom Hughs. It's the other YouTube channel I have for all of you. I would appreciate your support on that. If you could give it a thumbs up and a like.
Bas, maybe that's what happened because I've had a lot of trouble signing into you guys on Discord. It wasn't like Skype where it was easy to do.
When you go there, because I think you're going to really like the video. It was totally cool. Some of you were with me when we filmed it. It was just recent.
And yeah, so, I will, anyway, Bas. I'll give it a few hours.
The YouTube channel we have, the Experience Israel with Pastor Tom Hughs. And check it out, Capernaum. So go there. Okay. All right. Yeah, man, I miss Israel. I can't wait to go back. So
me and you too.
Yeah, I know you miss it even more. I have a lot to ask you about. Do we start with Esther, or do we start with
Well, let's start with what happened in Iran. I mean, we got to go. I mean,
Okay,
anybody
let's
who's
go.
connected to your channel or my channel knows exactly what happened.
Okay, it's only 2 hours old, guys.
But I think the world has changed. I mean, we can go into the
Yeah, I do,
technicalities,
guys.
or if you want
I
into
need an instruction
what
booklet.
actually happened on the ground. But I think there's three main aspects that what happened during these 2 weeks. What did he call it? The 12-day war, as opposed to the 6-day war. Okay, but something drastically has happened. And maybe we want to go into how the Middle East and even the world is different after the.
So I can get into your yellow Discord. I can get into that, but I can't get into your blue one. And I can't get into Misfits, but I can get into you just dying on your own. So I don't know how to get into Misfits and that blue one. Glass.
Those 12 days.
Yes, let's go there.
But what happened is that Iran turned out to be a paper tiger, paper lion, if you want that. The bravado, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, we're going to do this. We will blow you. I mean, you hear the rhetoric just like Saddam Hussein. Remember in the Gulf Wars? Okay, it's going to be the mother of all wars, and you're going to be sending your soldiers back in body bags. Nothing. There's a Muslim / Arab / Middle Eastern bravado that came out to be completely untrue. And I think more than anything, the reality check that the Middle East is going through right now about the difference between what is said and what is real is going to change the Middle East deeply. And my table is full of what's going on with Syria right now. Yeah. My table is full of what's going on with Saudi Arabia right now. And I think the main reason for that, more than...
Diane, I get women on my Gmail send me this thing and they want me to lock on the link, and it goes to a girl's stripping site. I couldn't believe it. And I let them know I'm not interested. And then about a week later, they were, hi, this is Jenny. You remember me? Blah, blah, blah. So they do that to us as well.
And what Israel did to
hey, Phil, good to see you, bro.
Taking out the threat, Israel proved to the world that you can take on Muslim mouth war with actual missiles and bombs. Mm. And I think that has happened. Look what happened to Hezbollah. Look what happened to Iran. Look what's happening to Hamas, though that's a whole different story if we want to get into. So I think more than anything, the difference between what we call in Arabic the Abu Ali. Abu Ali means, look what I can do. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this. And then, don't hit me, don't hit me, don't hit me. Yeah. That is the main difference in the Middle East today. And I'm going to actually extend.
Yeah, now Israel's hitting them with a big stick, with a big rhythm stick.
That's the main difference in the world today.
Wow. I have so many questions.
He's right.
Ask you. So let's start here. What's going on with Syria?
Syria, according to everything we understand, is about to sign some kind of deal with Israel, and it's going to include Syria and Lebanon. And from what we know right now, it is not a normalization. It's not a peace deal. It is not an Abrahamic Accord kind of deal. And the main reason it's not is because Israel's not willing to give up the Golan Heights.
Good.
And Syria cannot sign a full-fledged deal with Israel with the Golan Heights still in Israeli hands. But it's going to be, the way they're calling it in Israel, a non-war kind of an agreement with a cooperation on the Golan Heights to make sure that Hezbollah doesn't come back into Syria on the Golan Heights, and to make sure that the more militant aspects on the Golan Heights, in the southern part of the Golan Heights, are taken care of. It's going to...
Christ was born in Bethlehem, which was Israeli land when Christ was born. And now I'm pretty sure Bethlehem's in the Gaza Strip or the West Bank. one of them. It's in one of them, so it's in Palestinian territory now. But it's not their land. Historically, it's Jewish land, and we all know it.
I mean, Israel does stay. I don't know if you know, but Israel actually has outposts inside Syria today, inside Syrian soil. It means that Israel will not give up the Syrian side of Mount Hermon. I don't know if you've ever looked at Mount Hermon. It's got two.
Diane, my mum's bought a cat meower, this little thing that meows like a cat with a battery in it. And when the scammers ring her, we can hear her. She plays the cat meowing at them.
Two peaks. One was in Israeli hands, one was in Syrian hands, and there's a kind of a a saddle between. Both of them now are in Israeli hands, and Israel isn't planning on giving that back. But part of what they're talking about is opening up ski resorts on Mount Hermon on both the Syrian side and the Israeli side. And I think what's more important than anything is tying the Syrian issue to the Lebanese issue. Have you ever stood with me at Tel Dan, looking out into Lebanon? And just across the valley, there is a little tiny village that is very colorful, with green and yellow and red houses. And we used to say that is the border with us and Lebanon. It is it's a town called Rajal that was half in Lebanese hands and half in Israeli hands. Now, it used to be half Syria, half Lebanon. When Israel took over the Golan Heights in 1967, we took over part of that. That little piece of real estate was the excuse that Hezbollah was using to attack Israel.
Yeah.
Part of the agreement with Syria now is that that piece of real estate belongs to Syria.
I think Syria is run by the Muslim Brotherhood now, and that's not anything Muslim's not good, but that's specifically not good.
And that pulls the carpet out from the legitimacy of Hezbollah attacking Israel in the name of Lebanon, which is very interesting. And the last piece of that is that they're actually talking about us supplying natural gas to Syria through the Jordanian pipeline. We have a pipeline that takes natural gas from our Mediterranean sites into Jordan. I don't know if I think you pointed that out on the way.
Yeah, you have, yeah.
And then now they're talking about, because Jordan has a pipeline already with Syria, we'll be selling natural gas to the Syrians through that pipeline, meaning the lion is laying down with the lamb right now.
Well,
it looks like.
So Jelani, well, formerly known as Jelani, I don't know what his new name is. The guy,
I think.
So, I mean, this is who the deal's being made with?
Yes, but much more than that. And again, maybe to tie that into what we're talking about, one of the reasons, or one of the things I've been kind of asking myself,
hey, Shawnee, good to see
why
you.
has Turkey been so quiet during this whole balagan with Iran? Because, you know, Turkey and Iran see eye to eye and many things, and have actually cooperated.
Yeah, Shawnee, hasn't Robert F.K. Jr., he's been behind all that, hasn't he? Exposing the corruption and the pharmaceutical stuff.
Well, not me. I mean, I'm not the great this, but they're talking about some kind of America, Turkey, Israel dynamic that says to Turkey, settle down, let this happen. Syria needs to be rebuilt. The United States of America and Turkey is paying in its relative quiet for this. And that means if the gas thing is coming together, that this kind of dynamic will go with gas that'll go to Jordan and in through Turkey instead of going across the Mediterranean Sea directly to Cyprus and Greece. And we are hearing here that the American administration is trying to halt the Israel-Greece pipeline and is opening up the route of the Israel-Jordan pipeline. And that puts Turkey in the loop.
That is interesting. That is real interesting.
Yes.
Wow.
And that is something that's new, that's been coming down in the last day and a half.
Okay. So
guys, I missed that. I was talking on the chat with Vas, I think it was. What did they talk about?
During this whole balagan with Iran. because, you know, Turkey and Iran see eye to eye in many things and have actually cooperated. Well, not me. I mean, I'm not the great this, but they're talking about some kind of America, Turkey, Israel dynamic that says to Turkey, settle down, let this happen. Syria needs to be rebuilt. The United States of America and Turkey is.
And it wasn't that long ago that Turkey was trying to get into NATO, so they could be swayed to our side.
Paying in its relative quiet for this, and that means if the gas thing is coming together, that this kind of dynamic will go with gas that'll go to Jordan and in through Turkey instead of going across the Mediterranean Sea directly to Cyprus and Greece. And we are hearing here that the American administration is trying to halt the Israel-Greece pipeline and is opening up the route of the Israel-Jordan pipeline. And that puts Turkey in the loop.
That is interesting. That is real interesting.
Yes.
Wow.
And that is something that's new, that's been coming down in the last day and a half.
Okay, so what's going on with the Druze? D-R-U-Z-E, everybody. Not Jews, the Druze.
Australia, are you wasting more than you think? Let's start unwasting food by finally cooking the right amount of pasta.
I'm fleeing that on the bus.
Not Druids, Druze. Just a quick one. The Druze are like this kind of minority that lives part in Israel, part in Lebanon, and part in Syria, mostly in the southern part of Syria. The Druze in Israel are part of Israeli society. They serve in the military. They've got representatives in our government. The Druze are related to Islam. Like I would say, the example I used to use is like the Mormons are related to Christianity. It's a really, really weird offshoot of Islam. And there's been persecution by the Muslims, especially the new Syrian government. There's been persecution of the Druze for religious reasons. Israel has come out and said, if you hurt the Druze, you will have an issue with us. So that has settled down. Israel actually threatened Syria. If you don't get off the Druze, we will conquer the southern Golan Heights and turn it into a Druze state. And I think El-Julani, by the way, he's called El-Julani because his parents are from the Golan. It's the Golani guy. He kind of settled down. So they've settled the Druze problem right now. So right now, the Druze are in an agreement with the Syrian government. But let's tie one more thing to that I find is fascinating, is that if they...
Hey guys, I'll show you something I do to the LTB gang that I troll on Facebook. I'll show you something, guys. I say to them, okay, you've got me. I'll come out of the closet. Then I show them this. Where is it? I show them that, and then I say, you think the pink pants are a bit too much? I seen that. That's a trainee. Look at it. That's a trainee man or something. No, that's so creepy. Yeah, I tell them that's me. I've come out of the closet. They hate me.
Take away the Hezbollah's excuse, then the Hezbollah has no reason to be in Lebanon. What's going on in Lebanon right now is fascinating.
Hey, Johnny.
The Lebanese are disarming the Hezbollah.
Have a good night.
Right now. And the Lebanese parliament sat down yesterday and actually passed a law, okay, with Hezbollah representatives that there will only be one army in Lebanon, and that the Hezbollah will have to hand over its weapons to the Lebanese army. Now, if you defang or declaw the Hezbollah in Lebanon, and again, part of the reason that El-Julani is reaching an agreement with us is because they want that to happen too. Because El-Julani in Syria is afraid of the Hezbollah in Lebanon because the Hezbollah was what actually kept the Assad regime in power. They're the Iranian representatives. So any agreement with Syria will probably also mean an agreement with Lebanon. And lo and behold, we have normalization on Israel's northern border.
So fascinating. We were in Turkey probably about 2 months ago, just in the Ephesus area in Kusadasi, and the lady who was just leading our time, she just said, "Hey, look," she was very supportive of Israel. She was a Christian, and she said the majority of people in that area of Turkey can't stand what comes out of Istanbul, and I think there's a lot of that with the people, even the people in Iran that I met. I just met a young man from Syria who's a Christian. He just flat out told me, "I'm a Christian from Syria." That's how he introduced himself. And then, and we're finding that you have these oppressors that are there, and there's so many people that do not like what their government has been doing.
And here's part of the aspect of what the Middle East is: a neighborhood of power. It's all a power play. Arabs, Muslims are power playing. I mean, it's a society of power. And Israel is back on the top of the pyramid right now. In fact, I think even more so than Turkey. And that has changed the whole dynamic, meaning El-Julani, it's important for El-Julani to have Israel guarding his flank as it is important for him to have Turkey taking care of him. I mean, that's what has happened as a result of what happened in Iran. And that would not have happened or not have been that way if Iran hadn't been completely stepped on. And Iran was completely stepped on. And what's coming out as the information is more fascinating than most people think.
And I want to get to some of those fascinating things here in a minute. But with the Ayatollah, he's still mouthing off. And
oh yeah,
it's like he's still threatening.
No way. The cigarette patch takes away. No way. Is that true, Thinker? Or Vas, I should say?
You're looking at the things he's saying, and a lot of it, from what I understand, has to do with his thinking of his version of the 12th Imam, and how they've got to get rid of the Jews in order to bring their Messiah into this world. So he won't shut up.
He won't shut up. He won't shut up. Do you remember Monty Python in the scene of the Black Knight?
Oh, that's
when he gets his arms chopped off, then his legs, and yeah, a funny scene.
funny.
I mean, if you can find it, I mean, put a link up to it. I mean, they cut off the arm, and he says, "Oh, I'm going to take you out." I mean, the Black Knight is laying on the ground, bleeding, you know, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you. I'm going to kill you." I think this is to some because if you take their military power, again, there is a correlation in Muslim society between power and God's support. I mean, if God favors you, he will give you the power to...
We just had 4 young Muslims do a gang rape, if you know what I mean, on a 16-year-old girl, and there's 4 of them, and they're Muslims. They're going to need a lot of time in jail because that happened in 2001. A bunch of Muslims done that, raped their women, and they got 25 years actual time to do. So these kids, they're only kids, they don't know it yet. They have a lot of jail ahead of them, and rightly so. You can't do things like that.
Vanquish your enemies. And if you don't vanquish your enemies, that doesn't only mean that you have lost a war militarily. That means that you don't have God's favor. So even though he's lost from every point of view, he has to portray that he has won. Otherwise, he's got no religious standing. I mean, it's like thinking about the Pope, okay? when he loses a war, then he has to
That's
give up
it.
being the father of the Christian
Everything on
nation.
the table.
And so even if he does lose a war, he will still say, "I'm the winner," because that is his. That is his
That's
godliness.
good.
That is his Godhead. If he gives that up, whether this, even if he lost, if he admits to that, then he has no right to stand in
I thought it might have been
between God and the people. And that's why he has to do that.
And the last people on the planet that he would ever want to concede losing to would be Israel and the Jews. That would be,
And yeah, and again, it is a pride thing. But okay, you play football and you lose a game and you've lost a game and your pride is hurt, but it's not existential for you. For them, pride is existential. And again, we're in the Middle East. We're in a pride society. I mean, how do you justify being the great Iranian nation if if Israel cut you to pieces? I mean, the drones and the airplanes were still fly openly over Tehran, and they can't do anything. And what's more, Israel smacked them to pieces from an intelligence point of view. And I don't know if you remember the first day they took out 30 of the high-ranking IRGC and the high-ranking nuclear people, and they had each and every one of them pinpointed. So in 30 minutes, they took out 30 leaders. Now they had to know exactly where each one of them was. And if you see the pictures of the apartment buildings, you see a missile goes into the apartment. The apartment building, missile went into the side of the apartment, took them out in bed. How did they know where everybody was that morning?
so, are you going to tell that story? Because okay, I want to say this even before you go there. So I was with you, Jackie and I were with you. It was April or May, couldn't have even been March of 2023, right? So it was about 6 months before October 7th. And we went down to the area that we're looking into Gaza. And just before we went there, this is the time just before we went there while we're driving, you said, by the way, there could be a little bit of a problem because Israel took out 2 of the generals of Islamic Jihad. And how you described it is they took them out simultaneously. They pinpointed where they were in Gaza and eliminated them. And then, sure enough, that was the day that we went to get falafels and the rockets were going off.
Fireworks.
Those started, and Jackie ran into bomb shelters. But that was about 6 months before. So that precise, it's that kind of targeting is what you're talking about. They went through the windows. They took them out specifically.
Okay, so that's one part of the equation. But in order to do the other part of the equation, you have to know where they are. You have to know that they're there at that point. How do you know that? And that is where Esther came in. Well, her name wasn't Esther, by the way. Her name is Kathleen Perez Shakdam. And she was born in Paris to Jewish parents. And somehow, somewhere along the line, she managed to convince the people in Iran that she had converted to Shia Islam. And she became very, very well known inside the Muslim high society. She became very well known. And again, this is part of the story, but she was writing a blog about life in Iran, and she was praising the Ayatollah, and she was talking about how great Iran was, and she was doing meetings with the wives of the Republican Guard officers, and she was connecting, and she was making her way Iranian high society. She became a main player in Iranian high society for the last year and a half. They loved her quoting of the Quran in Farsi. She loved the way that she was, how do you say, saying how great the Ayatollahs were. And according to some of the stories, and I can't really validate this, but you can use your imagination. I don't know if you know, but Islam doesn't have what we would call the oldest profession in the world. It is illegal. But what they do have are short-term marriages, meaning you can get married to somebody for a couple of hours for a fee. And she was in some
So another load of crap from the Quran.
of these short-term marriages with a couple of the key figures in the Iranian high society and the Iranian elite. Now we know she was a Mossad agent.
Oh.
Flight Centre, your centre for travel.
We made it.
We caboodled it.
You made it with Caboodle.
Dexcom One Plus. Monitor glucose levels with real-time updates. Make more of the...
Wow.
And on the day that the explosion started blowing up, she was extracted from the northern part of Iran, from the Kurdistan area, by an Israeli helicopter.
Wow.
And I'm saying to myself, and by the way, how do we know this? Because there's pictures, there's posters of her all over the streets of Tehran. They were looking for her for a long time. And she completely took over. I mean, I don't know. Her name should be Esther.
That is fascinating.
Her name should be Esther. But yes, that has worked. And it's not the first time Israel has used that kind of dynamic. I don't know if you remember that Vanunu, who was the guy that worked in the so-called Israeli chocolate factory in Dimona and wanted to spill the beans on Israel's nuclear capabilities, was in London, kind of giving interviews to the I think the Times or the Sun, I don't remember. And he fell in love with this beautiful girl, and he went to spend the night with her, and he woke up in Tel Aviv.
And that was so Ellie Cohen, right? The
Israeli spy.
The Israeli spy, very fascinating, because also it must have been the short-term marriages then. As I went through the whole story with him, the documentary, it was very fascinating, but there was a lot of that type of thing going on as he was winning favor with these certain people in Syria. Very fascinating.
And yes, the first dynamic. By the way, Eli Cohen, there's a Netflix series called The Spy.
That's what I watched, yeah.
Yeah, and again, it gets a little bit raunchy because that was part of the dynamic. But if you can get to it, it gets a very interesting story about the dynamics of that.
Yeah. By the way, stories you can only hear from David Tao. You wouldn't know these things. David, is great. So how can we have a few more minutes, but I have a lot more questions to ask you. I got to ask you about Saudi Arabia. I want to ask you about perspective on a couple of other things I got here for you. The Midnight Hammer. Can you explain that in a minute? But first of all, how can people connect with you?
Okay. First of all, the Balagan Connection, that's right. Okay, on YouTube and on Insta, and it's been kind of working. And I want to say thank you for all of those who have made that connection. And that would probably be the best way. Yes, connection, movies, clips, things are going up about that. Let's talk about the Midnight Hammer. Did you understand the deception that President Trump pulled out on this one?
Yeah.
I'm dying to talk to Monkey about this one because
I'll put him. You want to? I will put him in. I'll connect him with you right after we're done.
Okay. In fact, I'd like to talk to, because here's the thing. Remember, Israel is bashed Iran, put Iran in, but everybody was talking there. This Fordo was so deep that we needed these bunker busting GBU 57s in order to get that deep. And the only one that has them is America. And the only airplane that can fly them is the B-2 Spirit. And I don't know if you remember, is America going to get in? Is America not? President Trump and Bibi were playing the media like a violin. They were kind of making everybody feel like they're having an argument, and they weren't really having an argument. By the way, Bibi's going to be back in the States on Monday. Next Monday, and that's going to be an interesting thing because that's going to tie into everything that's coming up now. And that's the whole story about what's going on with Gaza and the rest of the Abrahamic Accords. There's a feeling here that it's coming to some kind of fruition. We'll see. But anyway, so 6 B-2 bombers took off from this base in Wisconsin, I think, and flew to the west over California and over the Pacific towards, and then they said they were heading towards Guam. And everybody knew that if America is going to use something, I mean, they're going to need these to blow up that facility. But I remember saying to myself, wait a minute, it's a B-2 stealth bomber. How come everybody knows where they are? How come everybody is following where they're going? I mean, what's going on? They're talking about this, they're talking about that. It turns out that while 6 bombers went this way around the globe, okay, 7 bombers went around that way, and they were completely stealthed out. Nobody saw them, nobody heard them, nobody knew. I think Monkey probably could have followed them because they were clearing the airspace beforehand along the way, but the Iranians didn't see it coming. They were looking to the horizon and saying, okay, they're coming from here, and the bombers came from behind and completely surprised them. Israel took out a couple of facilities in order to ensure that dynamic, but basically, and did you see the pictures from Fordow, where you have 3 holes within a couple of feet of each other? And the fascinating that they managed to put them down. So they put one in one. They how do you say, they pinholed them one on top of the other to get all the way down. But again, Tom, we watched this happen. Look at everybody in the United States. No, that didn't go through. By the way, in Israel too, we didn't take them out. It didn't destroy. It didn't do what it needed to do. We know now that it did. We know that they were probably about a week from enriching the uranium that they did have.
Wow.
And thank God the Wicked Witch is dead.
So, okay, so I've heard that there's some missing uranium. Is that
Always the Wizard of Oz. Always.
not the case?
There's 408 kilo of uranium that has been enriched to 60% that we don't know exactly where it is. Now, officially, we don't know. I have a feeling that we do. I mean, think about if Israel has infiltrated intelligence-wise. I think Israel does know where it is. I would suspect that there's a different kind of problem with that, and that is if you send a bomber to blow that up, that's already 60% enriched. It wouldn't be a full-out nuclear fallout, but it would be a very serious nuclear problem. So I think that's part of the reason either we're not or haven't. And I wouldn't be surprised if President Trump is leaving the Iranians something to negotiate with, too.
Do you know what the Chinese planes were doing?
We don't know, but we think some of the Republican guards were taken out. Some of the family and the actual people. The ones who came in, you mean?
Yes, the ones that came in.
Oh, the ones who came in, according to what we understand from Israel, was bringing radar elements in order to kind of repair some of the radar that was taken out by the Mossad before the whole thing started off.
That seems like odd timing to bring in new equipment. Okay, so Saudi Arabia, what's going on with Saudi Arabia and also the Abraham Accords, because we're hearing a lot more talk about the Abraham Accords, which I would expect was going to happen even before, as soon as Trump was elected. I was thinking that would be one of the forefront things he would be doing.
The Target Big Brand Toy Sale is now on. Get 20% off toys from favourite brands like Lego, Barbie, Hot Wheels and more hot offers. The Big Brand Toy Sale must end July 16. T's and C's apply. Shop now and get playtime right on Target.
We're going to bring this whole place down.
Harbour Lane's EOS sale is here with savings of up to 50% off everything from the living room.
Well, again, everybody in Iran or in the Iranian Republic or in the Ring of Fire or the axis of resistance, call it what you want, are cursing Yahya Sinwar. We know today that what was planned by the Iranians was the destruction of the state of Israel. It wasn't just what happened on October 7th. It was supposed to be a full-fledged, and think about everything that's happened in the last 2 years condensed in 2 days.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that Hamas did in Gaza, the Hezbollah from Lebanon firing off tens of thousands of rockets all over Israel, Iran firing off the ballistic missiles that they did fire off.
Tens of thousands of missiles, and they can't feed their poor.
Think about if that happened in 1 week, Israel would be seriously on its back legs, and we would be contemplating a nuclear strike on Tehran. Thank God Yahya Sinwar pushed the button before he had everything in place, and we dealt with each one of them. We dealt with the Hamas, and we're still dealing, but then we dealt with the Hezbollah, then we dealt with Iran, each one separately, and Israel has taken on each one of them separately. But now that the situation is like this, the last sticky point is Hamas in Gaza. The minute that is solved, all the pieces of the Abrahamic Accords, Saudi Arabia, normalization, that access. I mean, again, people are showing maps. Bibi is showing maps from one side to the other. Syria, Lebanon falling in, the Gulf states falling in. I mean, all of that will fall in place. But there is a sticky point in Gaza right now that hasn't been resolved. And I think everybody realizes that until that's resolved, you can't go through the whole big balagan. And that, according to President Trump, will be resolved in the next 2 weeks. But we've been hearing that for a long time.
I tell you, everything is so fascinating. And what you just shared also about Sinwar and acting too fast with Hamas, you don't hear that anywhere. However, I will say this. In October of 2023, I had you on my program, and you had mentioned that you thought it was already speculated that they acted before they got the green light from Iran or whatever, because it was going to be a much bigger invasion.
It was supposed to be. And again, think about Israel from a military point so on the defensive that the 3,500 terrorists could move out and take more of Israeli territory. The Hezbollah had something similar planned in the north. So think about the Hamas taking up communities, cities, Sderot. We were in Sderot, maybe even Beersheba, a couple of air bases on the south.
And Diane, Tracy will pay you better than I pay you.
About the Hezbollah in the north taking over Kiryat Shmone and Nahariya, let's say, just a couple of miles into the border, and think about all of this happening while Israel is being attacked by, look at these ballistic, they fired 500 ballistic missiles at us in the last 2 weeks, only about 25 got through. The damage is devastating. But think about that all together, all at once, Israel would have been in an existential crisis. Thank God our enemy was stupid. I know it sounds weird to say it.
You know, God, it also shows God is in control. Behold, he who keeps Israel never slumbers nor sleeps. And although what's happened was horrific on October 7th, still it enabled Israel to really get the upper hand and just piece by piece steal things. Let me ask you about this, David. Excuse me just 1 second. What about the problems inside Judea and Samaria? You have Hebron, you have Shechem. Those are big problems.
So as of now, the vast majority of the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria have not risen up. Not in Judea and Samaria, not Palestine. People tend to forget that 20% of the population in Israel is Palestinian Arab Muslim. I mean, if they rise up inside the streets of Israel, that's
20%. I didn't know that. That's a high number.
What Sinwar thought was going to happen. In Judea and Samaria, the vast majority of the Palestinians have not risen up, but there is a very strong Hamas presence also inside Judea and Samaria. And what Israel is doing right now is dealing with the militant Hamas presence inside Judea and Samaria. And so far, we've kept our heads down. So far, and I'm going to say it even more, the Palestinian Authority does have an incentive to cooperate more with Israel than with the Hamas, because they know what would happen. They're looking at what's happening in Gaza, and they don't want that to happen to them.
Palestine cities, they've been destroyed worse than Germans in World War II. They're more damaged. They're just about leveled in Palestine.
And add on what I would call the Trump effect, or the Trump wagon, that everybody wants to get on right now. Everybody wants, and even the Palestinian Authority wants to get on the Trump wagon. And that, I think, as much as what's happening in Iran, as much as what's happened in Hezbollah, is the prerequisite to Israel reaching such a sense of normalization, agreement, and peace with its neighbors, because nobody's want to come. If Israel uses the United States as our
sucker,
I'm going to call it maybe a new term, our red, white, and blue dome. Okay. If Israel uses the United States as a red, white, and blue dome, we don't have to have the Iron Dome.
Very interesting.
That's our walls coming down.
Wow. So I looked at with Trump, there's even European leaders that are getting on board with Trump.
Yeah.
Well, Europe is saying thank you that he solved the problem that none of the American presidents have been able to solve ever since Jimmy Carter. I mean, ever since Jimmy Carter, nobody's been able to take up the Iranians and stop their bullying the rest of the Middle East. And Trump did it. I think, who was it? It was a NATO commander who wrote a letter to President Trump that said, thank you for doing what nobody else could do.
Well, these are really amazing days we live in. I'm going to ask you about something else, because there's a prop.
I'm just going to say, I love what Trump's doing. I know it's probably going to end bad, but I really love what he's doing.
Propaganda war that is,
especially how he's beating Iran.
Real, it still has, and I want to talk about that in anti-Semitism. In fact, I have a night coming up in August 3, a Sunday night, where
what sort of flowers you got, Trace?
Because a lot of these, there's talk shows, there's very popular people out there that just seem on the right, not just the left, but on the right in America, that are showing anti-Semitic leanings, to say the least, and anti-Israel. And but I mean, so you're Jewish, you're a believer in Yeshua, but as you look at it, what's your thoughts? You're now in Los Angeles, but you have your home in Jerusalem. You're back and forth. Well, what are your thoughts as you watch this? Because to me, it appears to be growing worse.
Well, I get to walk both sides. Well, I wouldn't call it a fence, but both hats. I'm both a Christian and a Jew. As a Jew, I'm not surprised. Hatred for the Jewish people has been a part of our way of.
Thanks, Diane, about Rosh Hashanah. That's tomorrow's stream.
Life down through the ages. I mean, we celebrate it.
Rosh Hashanah goes online with the not online, but is in line with the super soldier giants. That he knows all about that stuff.
And I talk to my friends in Israel, and they say, even, by the way, even the believing congregations, even pastors I talk to in Israel, they're saying, what do you want? I mean, we're not surprised. This is what we've been dealing with all of them. I mean, so now they're saying we kill babies. In the past, they said we use the blood of babies for Passover. What's the difference? We're not surprised. As a Christian, though, I'm disappointed. And let's go back to this. Satan hates what God loves. Mm-hmm. And if we are God's chosen people, then Satan by definition hates us. Satan also hates us because we represent that God is still in control of what's happening. I mean, look at what happened in the last 2 weeks. mean, you got to understand that, God's chosen people, with their back to the wall, stood up to this Iranian and pulled off something that I think it was Zechariah 8 that said.
I reckon their best move so far has been the phones, that when they dialed a certain number, it blew up in their faces. So they switched to walkie-talkies, but the Jews already put bombs in the walkie-talkies as well. I think that's that's very clever of the Jews to do that. I was very impressed.
As in those days, 10
Listen to me laugh at Muslims.
men from each nation will grab a Jew and say, tell us what's going on, because we know that God is with you. The world's military is lining up to hear what Israel did in Tehran. The world's intelligence agencies are lining up to hear what Israel did in Tehran. Everybody's lining up to see how we managed to pull this off. And they're saying, you've got something. They're gonna say, okay, you've got military, you've got something. The world is recognizing that Israel has something that nobody else has, because nobody else could have pulled this off. And again, I'm not surprised as a Jew that they hate us, but Satan has to somehow derail that.
Yeah, Di, I'll make tomorrow stream all about Russ Vista. I haven't played him before, and there's a reason I didn't play him before. Because he just had a radio thing out. He didn't have something he could see. And it's not as interesting if you're just looking at a blank sort of TV.
Has to fight against that.
So I think that's why I haven't played him.
He has to fight against the fact that God proves his existence in the existence of the state of Israel, in the existence of the Jewish people, in the spectacular victory of the state of Israel. Yeah. That goes against everything Satan stands for. So until now, from a political point of view, he's been putting himself into the progressive, the left. Let's diffuse truth completely. And that's what we saw until this election. Immediately after the election, and we see that the right has realized where the truth is, and the American majority has decided to go with truth and not with that, then he has invested through his proxies into derailing, diffusing, and fading the truth that connects Israel to the right side of the political map, to the Christian side. Candace Owens died, if you remember, started her career with Ben Shapiro on the Daily Wire, supporting Israel. But when Israel is now victorious to a certain extent, and if truth is now victorious, and if President Trump is tying between that truth and Israel from a political point of view, Satan has to derail that. And the way to derail that is go back to the basic Jewish libels. The evil of the world is a result of the Jews. And that's the undercore of all of these. And just get on one of Candace Owens' podcasts where she says, Israel has never done anything for America. What has America ever gotten anything from Israel? What has America ever, how has the Zionist movement ever done anything for Israel? And she is derating the truth of that. Satan is using them right now. And I need people who listen to us to be very, very careful, because Satan is whispering into the ears of many, many Christians right now. And this is where you have to use the Holy Spirit, connect to the truth, and realize where the false prophets are. And the Bible talks about it a lot, and where the real prophets are.
Health insurance costs causing blood pressure to soar, yet some still not compared.
You made it with Caboodle.
Absolutely. In fact, David, I have a new book that has just actually, it comes out tomorrow. Wow. And what it is, I don't think I even told you this yet. So did I tell you this?
No.
See, this is Paul Begley. We'd already know the price of the book and where to get it. And that's true, guys. He's so greedy.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll send it to you. So I started working on it in 2013, just as sermons I had done through my prophecies on the nation of Israel.
Right.
And so 2013, 2012, right around in there. And I would update it every now and then. And then a while back, I said, I need to put this into a book format. So finally did it. It was a whole lot of work over the last couple of months, especially the last month. And it's 15 chapters. And what I did is I wanted to give Christian friends, this is for all of you, because this is exactly what David's talking about. I wanted to give the Christian who right now believes understands God's covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, his covenant with the Jews, the Messiah is Jewish, and then Jesus is coming back. I totally believe like it.
Diane, I'm pretty sure Paul's only got one book. I've never seen him plug any other book. He's got one book, and I think it's 10 years old, and he's always got it on display when he streams. What a greedy little slug he is.
Even does right now. This is where the real attacks are happening, because people who have followed me or followed you, they're now emailing me saying, hey, I don't understand this. I'm not so sure I support Israel. Why, that. And I wanted to get people from Genesis chapter 12, verse 3, I'll bless those who bless thee and curse him who curses thee. I wanted to give them,
I bless all of Israel. Let God sort them out.
As much scripture as possible, put it into the context of where we are today. So I did it in 15 different chapters. And also, and it was also this, David, I wrote a chapter in there for why should you support Israel, or should you support Israel? And what I did is I went on to describe what it means to support Israel. And instead of just doing the getting mad and argumentative, I just gave these things. And I said, look, it's not that you support everything the Israeli government does, but one of the factors is you support Israel's right to exist. But I went through it methodically just to give people that, because this argument is going to get uglier and uglier, and Christians have to be well equipped for their own strength, even if they're not giving it out to, for your own strength to know, get beyond Genesis chapter 12, verse 3. You got to be able to do more than just that.
And again, this is, I'm sorry to say, this is something that's been happening. I mean, Satan has used attacks against the Jews and against Israel as a way to derail God's plan down through the ages. In the past, he's done it with blood libels and persecution, and with the Holocaust. Now he's doing it on the internet, and now he's doing it from the pulpits.
From the pulpits. And it is. And David, I see it in replacement theology that's been around for obviously a long time. But I look and go, wow, it's the attacks are unbelievable. I mean, I don't want to get into it publicly, but I mean, okay, I'll just give you one description, right? We posted a video, it was about 3 weeks ago. Within 3 hours, we had 450 comments on it. 400 of them were anti-Semitic.
Well,
out of 450.
So, again, people need to understand this is Satan using the tools of the age to attack God's people. And again, we need to remember that this is where the battle is being fought. And you're doing an amazing job, Tom, with bringing the story of Israel together and putting it to people on the table. But eyes they have, but they do not see. Ears they have, but they do not hear. And we're seeing much more of that going on from different directions. And people you see the reality. You see what's happening. You see and hear what's going on. Everybody's all up in arms about what happens in Gaza, but nobody actually talks about what happens in Sudan, Yemen, and Congo. You hear terrible things going on. There's terrible things going on all over the world, and Israel is kind of zoned out.
South Africa, they're killing the whites.
out or marked out for special attention by everybody. Again, if you want proof that God's still messing in the world today, look at what's happening to Israel. And I still remember a conversation with a very famous pastor who really believed that Israel has lost the promise. And you're trying to prove to him, wait a minute, God said this. He said, yeah, but you can interpret that way. And I said, God said this. Yeah, you can interpret that way. And I said, wait a minute.
God will never be done with the Jews.
A minute. Satan knows who Israel is.
Yeah.
Satan knows what we are. And just like in the New Testament, every time Jesus meets a demon, the demon recognizes him like that.
Yeah.
Satan recognizes who we are. Otherwise, how do you explain all of these attacks on Israel? How do you explain the discrepancy?
And guys, when Jesus sent all the demons into the pigs, and the pigs jumped off the cliff, why did the demons want to go into the pigs if they're just going to jump off the cliff anyway? I don't understand what happened there.
Between Israel being held to one moral standard and the rest of the world being another moral standard. How do you explain that even though we're the most moral army in the world, somebody's going to get up on BBC Live and yell death, death, death to the IDF? That happened
just the other day. Just the other day at the concert. Yeah.
How do you explain that?
Yeah, and the people are, I don't know how many thousands of people were even at that concert. That's happening. We were watching. So in the days of Nazi Germany, you had it localized to wherever the Nazi regime was, that type of thing. We were watching this global, but especially in the Western countries, Europe, the United States, Australia, Canada. This is where we are seeing that.
But you know what, Diane, with Begley, he gave the Pope a good rap. Anyone that gives the Pope a good rap is suspicious.
Yes. I was down in Mexico over the weekend, had a great conference down there, and one of the young men was wearing a shirt with the Magen David on it. And I said, do you feel safe wearing that shirt? He goes, in Mexico? Oh yeah, people are great with it in Mexico. He goes, well, I'm not going across the border into America wearing the shirt. I'd be afraid over there. That's the reality of it. And, I know we went a few minutes over, but Dave, I want to reiterate this. Two things is one is everybody, if you don't already follow David's website and his channel, you can see the name behind him, the Balagon Connection. You can check it out there, and Instagram and everywhere else. But also, now is the time to really be strengthened up and build up your faith and learn.
What are you crying for?
Understand why you believe what you believe, even when it comes to the nation of Israel, because we need to link arms. And I believe that there's many people who follow Bible prophecies that are going to start falling by the way. They're not going to pay any attention anymore because it's going to be too hard. The pressure is going to increase within churches and from pastors and from other church people to just be done with Israel. So friends, now is the time to strengthen one another and learn for yourself also. Do all that you can, but share the video, share this video, share David's video, because we need to get the truth out there. And again, go to the Balagon Connection. David, you have any final thoughts for everybody?
Well, I'm going to throw something in the air here, but think about this. If a B-2 Spirit stealth bomber can fly across the world without anybody knowing and drop a bomb on a nuclear facility in Iran, it could also fly across the world without anybody knowing and drop a bomb on, let's say, a Three Gorges Dam.
Okay, I'm just going to say it. They're stealth bombers, buddy. They're in stealth mode. You're not going to see them. That's why they're called stealth bombers.
In China, which would bring a flood through the whole Yellow River Basin that would probably kill 2 million people.
Okay, that was interesting. What did you say there?
I'm going to throw something in the air here, but think about this. If a B-2 Spirit stealth bomber can fly across the world without anybody knowing and drop a bomb on a nuclear facility in Iran, it could also fly across the world without anybody knowing and drop a bomb on, let's say, a Three Gorges Dam in China.
Talia, I've already got a few months of food put aside just for this sort of event. But yeah, the 4th and the 5th is getting a lot of traffic, mainly for your grid getting terrasacks on your grid and your grid going down. That seems to be what they're putting on the traffic about July the 4th and 5th. And you got the young punks from South America that'll do it for you.
Would bring a flood through the whole Yellow River Basin that would probably kill 2 million people. And I'm sure that people in China are thinking, wait a minute, if Trump is able, capable, and willing to do that there.
Diane, I got more than just rice. I got spam. So you're not going to get any spam when all the food goes out of the shopping centres?
If we cross a line, will he be able, capable, and willing to do it somewhere else? That is a threat that you don't really need a nuclear bomb for. And I think that's part of what's changed in the world since that attack too.
Wow. Well, David, it was just fantastic joining me today. Thank you so much. I wish I could have you on more often. We'll see what we can do. But don't forget, David's we're going to be in Santa Barbara, everybody, coming up.
Yeah.
So, okay, I enjoyed that. This is what I was going to do next.
Genesis reveals very few details, but there's an ancient text that does solve this mystery, the Book of Jubilee. The 10 secrets of the Book of Jubilees and why it was banned. God almost completely destroyed humanity with the Great Flood, the most severe punishment.
I try not to play things we already know on this, like just say the 10 Commandments. We already know that. But this sort of stuff's sort of new.
Recorded in the
like I don't know what's in the Book of Jubilees, and apparently it's an important book. So it's the first time I'm going to hear what they're going on about with Jubilees.
The Bible. But what was so terrible that it drove God to take such drastic measures? Genesis reveals very few details, but there's an ancient text that does solve this mystery, the Book of Jubilees. This fascinating book remained hidden for 2,000 years within Ethiopia's Orthodox Bible, revealing astonishing secrets such as the true reason behind the flood and the unknown roles of angels. But even more astounding, this text claims that humanity has followed an incorrect calendar for centuries and presents a solar calendar supposedly designed by God himself. It contains 50 chapters filled with shocking revelations and provides answers to unsolved mysteries.
50 chapters, and it's the Book of Jubilee. That's a golden jubilee or something, isn't it? The 50th year jubilee? What's it called?
Is in the Bible. But then, why was it banned by most Christian churches? What controversial secrets does it contain? It was 200 BC, and Judea was experiencing the turbulent Maccabean era. This was a time of significant religious and cultural conflicts. The Book of Jubilees was written during this challenging period. This ancient text holds many incredible secrets, which we'll uncover in this video, but one especially controversial secret led to its banning: God's supposed solar calendar. This calendar had exactly 364 days. The Book of Jubilees was emphatic. This calendar came straight from God. According to its writings, an angel directly revealed this calendar to Moses on Mount Sinai. A year of 364 days divides perfectly into 52 weeks. Most importantly, this divine arrangement meant the sacred festivals would always fall on the same weekday year after year. However, religious leaders saw this system as a serious threat. The reason was simple. The temple in Jerusalem relied on a lunar calendar to schedule festivals and worship rituals. This direct confrontation with religious authorities carried deep consequences. Jubilees soon became banned, with copies systematically destroyed. Its teachings survived only in secretive circles, quietly preserved away from mainstream eyes. Indeed, for mainstream Judaism and later Christianity, the Book of Jubilees remained either unknown or deliberately ignored for centuries. But 2,000 years later, an archaeological discovery revealed the Book of Jubilees. Surprisingly, in the mid-20th century, Bedouin shepherds made an astonishing discovery. In the caves of Qumran, near the Dead Sea, they found ancient jars containing scrolls. This discovery triggered extensive archaeological expeditions. From these emerged the legendary Dead Sea Scrolls. Their significance was monumental. They provided the oldest biblical manuscripts ever discovered.
I've only got spam because it keeps, like, I don't know how long before it goes off.
A direct window into Judaism.
And I'll tell you what, if we're in famine, people would kill for a bit of spam. I haven't just got ham spam. I've got, I don't know what I got. I've got more than just ham.
From 2,000 years ago. Surprisingly, among these treasures were fragments of Jubilees in its original Hebrew. This remarkable find confirmed the ancient origins of the book and led scholars worldwide to carefully examine it. However, the reason we can read Jubilees in its complete form today is due to an even more intriguing story. The Ethiopian Orthodox Church included Jubilees in their biblical canon. Indeed, they considered it sacred scripture. For centuries, much of the world tried to standardize canonical.
If it's in the Dead Sea Scrolls, it is sacred text. That's what I believe.
Texts, which led to the exclusion of books like Jubilees. But Ethiopia maintained a notable independence. Its ancient Christian tradition and geographic isolation protected it from many pressures exerted by other nations seeking to unify Christianity. Because of this, its old canon survived intact, preserving Jubilees completely.
Man.
The Book of Jubilees presents itself in a unique way. It doesn't...
Diane, that's why your dog's got fur, so you don't have to buy him that.
Claim to be a text authored by human beings. Rather, it explicitly describes itself as a revelation. A very special angel, the angel of the presence, according to the text, dictated its contents directly to Moses. This extraordinary encounter...
The angel of the what? Presence?
...describes itself as a revelation. A very special angel, the angel of the presence, according to the text, dictated...
The angel of the presence. I wonder what that sounds like the Holy Ghost.
Its contents directly to Moses. This extraordinary encounter occurred on Mount Sinai. During the 40 days Moses remained there. The revelation follows a clear structure. The book is divided into 50 chapters. It measures time in a unique manner. Cycles of 49 years. These time spans are the Jubilees the text is named after. This system aimed to be very precise. In fact, it was intimately connected to a solar year of 364 days. This was key for its authors. With 364 days, the year divided into exactly 52 perfect weeks. Thus, every significant religion...
Okay, it was Julius Caesar who came up with the 365-day calendar we use now. He's the one who came up with that.
This festival would always fall on the same weekday. To Jubilees, this consistency represented a clear sign of God's perfect order. The main ideas expressed within Jubilees intend to show that everything described elsewhere in Scripture was already planned by God long before it actually occurred. One clear example of this concept is the existence of the heavenly tablets. In the book of Exodus, we hear about the 2 stone tablets containing the 10 Commandments written by God and given to Moses. However, the book of Jubilees reveals something more. It states that those stone tablets were actually a copy or transcription of what already existed on the heavenly tablets. The heavenly tablets, therefore, were the divine original, far older and more complete. Thus, the commandments received by Israel at Mount Sinai were not newly created that day. They were part of an eternal law, a law that already existed, perfect and complete in heaven. Yet this particular way of structuring history and time was not by chance. It had a very clear purpose. The Book of Jubilees sought to demonstrate something essential. It aimed to show that everything happening is part of God's divine plan and was determined beforehand. And it is precisely this insight that the next secret reveals. The first secret, the cosmic origin before the universe. According to
This will be interesting.
Jubilees, many pivotal events had already been determined long before those described in traditional Genesis. The book takes us back in time in a remarkable way. It goes even beyond the first day of creation. For instance, it makes an extraordinary statement about angels. It says they were created even before light itself. They existed before the physical world began. Indeed, the first day of creation described in Jubilees is much more detailed. Before the world took its visible shape, God had already created the upper heavens, the primordial earth, and the waters. But more significantly, he created on that day the entire host of angels. This included the angels of the presence, who served directly before him, and the spirits who govern the forces of nature. And there is
How exactly did he give the angels birth? How exactly did he do that? Create 24 angels, whatever it is. How does he create angels?
more. The Sabbath, the day of rest, also had an earlier beginning. According to Jubilees, God established the Sabbath even before creating heaven and earth. This means the Sabbath was not just for humanity. It was a cosmic principle established since eternity upon the heavenly tablets. The vision of the Garden of Eden in Jubilees also offers unique details. Adam and Eve, for instance, were not simply naked. The book states they wore special garments. These garments were made of light, which according to...
Oh, and guess what? That's where the Mormons' holy underwear would come from. I reckon that's where they get that from.
Tales. Adam and Eve, for instance, were not simply naked. The book states they wore special garments. These garments were made of light, which according to some gave them an almost angelic appearance. But the biggest difference lies in the figure of the serpent. Jubilees leaves no room for doubt on this.
Talia, there's got to be a process behind it, creating angels. I don't know how he do it, but yeah.
Point, it explicitly identifies...
I'd love to be told how he does it.
...as the serpent as Satan. This identification is
Hey,
key.
come on.
Right from humanity's beginning, the book makes clear that a spiritual war was taking place, a cosmic battle between good and evil. With these unique details, the Book of Jubilees offers a different perspective. It describes a universe where laws, sacred times, and key characters were established long before humans were created. Indeed, this insight reveals the following secret. The flood itself was planned by evil. Second secret. The flood, the Nephilim, the Watchers, and the origin of demons. The Book of Jubilees gives further details about the corruption that caused the flood. According to Jubilees, this corruption started in heaven. It was carefully orchestrated by evil forces. At this point, new figures appear, the Watchers. These angelic beings initially decided to share their knowledge with humanity. Their intention was to guide people onto the right path, but soon they began to stray. They taught mankind forbidden knowledge, secrets from heaven that were never meant to be revealed. Sorcery, astrology, crafting weapons, and using adornments to deceive. These teachings only spread more discord and sin throughout the world. Yet soon, this group made a terrible decision. They became captivated by the beauty of human women. From the union between Watchers and women arose strange creatures, beings called Nephilim, giants of enormous size. They were always hungry. First, they devoured all the food meant for humans. Then, they turned to animals for their sustenance. Their hunger grew so fierce, they began attacking each other, even consuming human flesh. Because of them, death, violence, and injustice consumed the earth. Yet, behind all of this evil lurked a hidden master. Jubilees introduces a key figure, Mastema. The book names him the leader of evil spirits, the prince of hatred.
Oh, that's the leader down in Antarctica. I reckon there's a leader called King of the World down there. This must be the dude. Wow. No wonder Jubilees was left out. I'm going to get Jubilees and put it up after tomorrow. I'll do Russ Dizdar tomorrow, and the next day I might look that up.
It was he who originally incited...
Because Jubilee sounds pretty interesting so far.
...the Watchers to this corruption. Facing the extreme wickedness spreading across the earth, God chose to act. His plan was to punish the Watchers, imprisoning them for their sins. Then he made a drastic decision to cleanse the earth of its wickedness through a great flood. Mastema, the leader of the evil spirits, saw the corruption he had orchestrated under threat. Yet, recognizing he was powerless against the Creator, he devised another strategy entirely. Therefore, when God prepared to destroy all the evil spirits born from the Nephilim, Mastema intervened. He did not bother trying to stop the flood itself or the punishment of the Watchers. His plan was something else entirely. Mastema appeared before God, arguing that if all evil spirits were destroyed, he would be unable to fulfill his purpose. He would have no servants left to tempt humans and test their loyalty to God. He needed some of those spirits to remain. Therefore, He made a very specific and cunning request. He asked God to let him keep a portion of these demons, the spirits of the giants. He requested control over 1/10 of them. His plan was clear. With these demons under his command, he could continue tempting humanity. He could accuse people before God and lead them astray throughout history. And surprisingly, God granted this request. He permitted Mastema to retain that portion of evil spirits to continue exerting his influence upon the world. This tale of fallen angels, ravenous giants, and a demonic chief with a long-term strategy is profoundly significant. It is not merely a story about monsters. Jubilees, through these details, clearly explains the origin of much of the world's evil. It presents a very definite idea. The demons that tempt mankind are restless spirits of deceased Nephilim. These spirits can find no peace due to their unnatural hybrid origin. They were born from the forbidden union between the heavenly and the earthly. Therefore, their very existence remains a constant source of trouble. This, of course, offered a viewpoint quite different from that held by other religious groups. The book of Genesis, for example, is brief and mysterious when it comes to angels and the Nephilim. Jubilees, however, fills these gaps with abundant details. It explicitly explains the origins of active evil, not just the wickedness originating from human hearts, but also the existence of a hierarchy of evil spirits, commanded by Mastema, their cunning leader, who operates under divine permission to test mankind. Thus, according to the Book of Jubilees, the flood wasn't simply punishment for humanity's wrongdoing. It wasn't just a natural catastrophe set forth by a regretful God. It was much more than that. It represented the climax of an intense spiritual warfare, a divine operation to cleanse the earth from a very particular supernatural corruption, the violent giants and the corrupt influence of their fathers, the Watchers. Yet, even after the waters receded, the fight was not entirely over. Mastema's cunning.
Talia, I've dreamt I've walked through walls before, and it feels like walking through a mattress, like it's soft like that, with no push on it. It's like walking through a mattress. You can tell you're walking through something. It's in my dreams I'm talking about.
Ensured that a remnant of evil in the form of demons would stay active in the world. Thus, the spiritual struggle, as Jubilees portrays it, continues.
So this says that Satan was given 10% of the Nephilim to terrorize the rest of the world. So he nearly beats us with 10%. Imagine if God let him have 40% or something like that. We wouldn't exist.
And this is why evil persists to this day. But perhaps you wonder about Noah, the great protagonist of the flood, and his role in all of this. Jubilees addresses that as well, and that's what we'll discuss in the next secret. Third secret, the divine laws and Noah, according to Jubilees. After the deep corruption and fierce spiritual warfare, the flood finally arrived. Yet the Book of Jubilees provides precise details about this event, even specifying exactly how long it lasted. The flood wasn't just an indefinite time of rain and chaos. It lasted exactly 1 year, one complete cycle, until the earth was ready again. And at the end of that year, we discover another interesting detail from this book, the exact spot where Noah's Ark came to rest. Genesis identifies Mount Ararat. However, Jubilees tells it differently. It states the Ark landed on Mount Lubar, one of the peaks of the Ararat range, yet specifically indicating a different location. Indeed, Jubilees often repositions key geographical markers. It thus offers us its own sacred geography, adjusting the stage for divine history. After the flood, God established a new covenant with Noah and his descendants. And in Jubilees' version, this covenant already included key elements of the law, elements the Bible attributes much later to Moses. But Jubilees insists.
Are they going to talk about the Noahide law?
That Noah received them beforehand. One clear example is the renewed significance of the Sabbath, a remembrance of God's rest, now essential for humanity as it began anew. The distinction between pure and impure animals was also clearly established, an essential guide for diet and future sacrifices. But perhaps most remarkable was the institution of the Feast of Weeks, also known as Shavuot. Jubilees introduces it as a part of God's covenant with Noah. In other words, this festival existed long before it was formally presented to Moses at Sinai. This reinforces a fundamental idea in Jubilees. God's law is eternal. Its principles have always existed, revealed gradually through history. The post-flood world urgently required a new order, a renewed structure for Noah's descendants. Thus, the Book of Jubilees concludes this chapter with a highly symbolic scene. It vividly describes how Noah, following divine instructions recorded on the heavenly tablets, divided the earth among his three sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. Here, we find key differences from the narrative in Genesis. In Jubilees, Noah doesn't act solely on his own initiative. Instead, he obeys precise divine guidance. Furthermore, the division of lands is carried out by casting lots. This ensures each territory was assigned by divine will, not merely by Noah's human judgment. With this, Jubilees emphasizes that the settlement of peoples and nations was no mere historical accident, nor simply a result of migrations, nor Noah's personal choice. It was predestined by God from the very beginning, already inscribed in heaven. Fourth secret: plagues and the war against Egypt's gods. According to the Book of Jubilees, the Israelites' exodus from Egypt, led by Moses, was not merely an escape from slavery. It was far greater. It symbolized a battle against the dark spiritual forces that ruled over Egypt. In Jubilees, the plagues unleashed upon the land of the Nile come with a different explanation. They were not simply signs intended to bend Pharaoh's will. Each plague, the book reveals, was a purposeful strike against Egypt's gods. These gods were
I wonder how many years these plagues played out, because it couldn't happen in like 30 days, because they wouldn't get time to recover from the last plague. But I reckon these plagues have to go for about 3 years or something.
Seen as demonic entities, all under the leadership of an ancient adversary, Mastema, the prince of evil spirits. Indeed, Jubilees explains that Mastema himself actively participated throughout these events. For instance, he empowered the Egyptian magicians, enabling them to duplicate some of the miracles performed by Moses and Aaron, such as turning rods into serpents. His goal was to discredit the workings of God. Additionally, Mastema directly influenced Pharaoh by hardening his heart, ensuring he repeatedly refused to yield. But Mastema's interference became even more personal and dangerous. In a remarkable episode, the book recounts how Mastema launched an attack directly against Moses. He attempted to kill him even before Moses could begin his sacred mission of liberating Israel. Mastema's goal was unmistakable in every action: to prevent the Israelites from gaining their freedom at all costs. But God stepped in mightily, unleashing his judgments upon the Egyptians and their gods. The death of Egypt's firstborn was the final and most devastating strike. This plague claimed the heir of every Egyptian household, from Pharaoh himself down to the lowliest servant. It showed God's absolute dominion over life and his power above every deity or force in Egypt. Following this plague, Mastema was restrained for a time. His power was bound by God's angels, while Israel prepared for their departure.
Yeah, see, I knew it didn't happen in like 30 days. They would have to have time to get things ready. The Jews need time to pack their bags and go. I knew they give the impression it happens one after the other, but I agree with these guys. It was probably over 2 or 3 years.
His malice would not end there. At the very last moment, as the Israelites began their escape from Egypt, Mastema was released. He once again corrupted Pharaoh's heart. He drove Pharaoh to change his mind, leading his army to pursue Israel all the way to the Red Sea. Even after his apparent defeat, Mastema still sought their ultimate destruction. Fifth secret: the hidden truth of the patriarchs. The Book of Jubilees presents the patriarchs in a...
Yeah, the 24 patriarchs. I don't know who they are. Don't know much about them.
Very special light. These men weren't merely faithful. They knew and observed a divine law. This is significant. It means that their righteousness didn't stem merely from his culture. It came from this divine law, perfect, unchanging, and eternal. One intriguing and unique example of this is Abraham's circumcision according to the Book of Jubilees. This wasn't simply a covenant limited to Abraham and his own era. Jubilees provides it with a much more ancient and exalted origin. It tells us circumcision was commanded directly from heaven. And here's the fascinating part. This law was already inscribed on the heavenly tablets long before God had even created the world. That's why the circumcision is spoken of as having an eternal origin. It wasn't a new commandment created just for Abraham. Rather, it was a divine principle that had always existed, forming part of God's original design. Moreover, Jubilee suggests
back then, circumcision would have a lot to do with hygiene, because back then they didn't shower every day, remember? They didn't have showers. They probably showered once a month or something. So that circumcision, I reckon that's really because of hygiene.
that the practice of circumcision didn't originate on earth among humans. According to Jubilees, it was born in heaven itself. Remarkably, the text even indicates this was a law observed by angels who stood in God's own presence. This stands in stark contrast to the account we find in Genesis. In Genesis, circumcision was established by God specifically with Abraham at a clear moment in his life. There, it serves as a physical sign in the flesh, symbolizing the covenant between God and his chosen people. Jubilees, however, emphasizes its heavenly and eternal beginnings, giving it far greater significance. No longer is it merely an important earthly ritual limited to one people group. Instead, circumcision becomes part of God's cosmic and fundamental order. Moreover, Abraham didn't discover everything about God and his law on his own. The book of Jubilees reveals that he had direct encounters with angels. These meetings were neither casual nor brief. These heavenly beings, sometimes referred to in tradition as the mighty angel of the presence, taught Abraham many profound truths. They revealed to him specific laws and deep insights into God's ways. For instance, they carefully showed him exactly how to perform sacrifices pleasing to God. Additionally, they instructed him precisely on how and when to observe certain important festivals. Among these were the Feast of First Fruits, Shavuot, and most notably the Feast of Tabernacles, Sukkot, each with its particular rites. All this occurred long before Moses received the law on Mount Sinai. This highlights a key and recurring theme in Jubilees. The law revealed at Sinai wasn't something brand new. It had previously been shared by God directly with the faithful patriarchs. Genesis, the biblical book, also depicts angels or divine messengers visiting Abraham. Here, they discuss with him the terrible fate awaiting Sodom and Gomorrah. In Genesis, these beings serve primarily as bearers of crucial messages or as those carrying out divine judgments. But the Book of Jubilees takes it one step further. It describes with far greater emphasis how the angels actively instructed Abraham in a comprehensive set of divine...
Guys, we're going to watch this Book of Jubilees. After tomorrow's Rust Is Day, I'll look into that. Sounds pretty interesting to me.
Laws and statutes. These weren't mere announcements. They were true teachings, and there are even more intriguing details about the knowledge Abraham gained. Jubilees also reveals that Abraham didn't just learn directly from angels, he devoted himself to studying ancient writings as well. These were texts passed down from his ancestors, such as Noah and Enoch. To enable him to read them, the angels taught Abraham Hebrew, a language that Jubilees identifies as the tongue spoken in heaven. Sixth secret. Sin is recorded as debt. The Book of Jubilees has a solemn outlook on sin. It doesn't portray sin merely as a temporary human mistake. Rather, it presents sin as something with profound and lasting consequences reaching even into heaven itself. According to Jubilees, wrongful deeds, especially those severe and deliberate, are meticulously recorded. They are noted down on the heavenly tablets. To Jubilees, this means each sin literally represents an outstanding debt before God. This concept reveals a view of God as perfectly just and all-knowing. He sees everything. Nothing escapes his attention, and every sin, like a debt, awaits resolution, whether through punishment, sincere repentance, or forgiveness within God's grand, mysterious plan. With this idea in mind, Jubilees retells the story of Joseph, Jacob's beloved son, from a fresh perspective. He too lived under this divine law and protection. His story is best known for the horrible betrayal by his own brothers. Consumed by envy over Joseph's dreams and the special favor their father Jacob lavished upon him, they schemed to get rid of him. At first, they considered killing him, but in the end they sold him as a slave to merchants heading toward Egypt. To cover up their crime, the brothers smeared Joseph's coat with the blood of a young goat. This deception led their father Jacob to believe that a wild animal had devoured his favorite son. Once in Egypt, Joseph endured difficult years and faced many trials. Yet the book of Jubilees reveals another important and illuminating detail about his brother's treachery. It was recorded as a grievous sin, a sin meticulously documented in the heavenly tablets. Genesis, in the biblical account, emphasizes the brothers' eventual repentance and Joseph's forgiveness. However, Jubilees adds this critical detail regarding the heavenly record. It serves as proof that evil actions carry real weight, a stain in the divine and celestial order. It demonstrates clearly that nothing escapes God's gaze, that every injustice is carefully noted. Curiously, however, the recording of sins in the heavenly tablets is not merely intended as a guarantee of future punishment. Instead, from the very beginning, these records also account for the possibility of repentance. They show that God's plan is so perfect, it even includes how people can return to Him, and how repentance itself is also recorded on the heavenly tablets. Although the serious sin committed by Joseph's brothers was noted as a debt on these tablets, the divine plan written upon the same heavenly pages also revealed the path toward forgiveness. If their repentance was genuine and heartfelt, that debt of sin could be settled or forgiven by God. This doesn't mean the sin was erased from history as though it never happened, but if forgiveness was registered on the tablets, they could also receive forgiveness from God. Of course, this forgiveness depended on the sincere repentance of Joseph's brothers, and indeed years later, they would genuinely and deeply repent. Thus, the concept of a heavenly record found in Jubilees is very profound. It teaches us that all our actions, both good and bad, have serious consequences and are noted by God. But equally importantly, it emphasizes that God's divine plan always provides the opportunity for salvation and forgiveness for those who sincerely turn their hearts back to Him. God's mercy and justice are closely intertwined on these heavenly tablets. Seventh secret: the consequences of the first murder. Jubilees views sin as more serious than typically depicted in the Bible. It does not only harm individuals, but it also damages the relationship between all humanity and God. The book of Jubilees describes in detail how this perfect harmony was first broken and provides a different version of the story of Cain and Abel. Jubilees adds details not found in Genesis. For instance, Jubilees names the daughters of Adam and Eve, while Genesis never specifies who Cain's wife was. According to Jubilees, one of these daughters was Awan, who eventually married her brother Cain. Jubilees explains that in the beginning, these sibling marriages were necessary to populate the earth. The conflict between Cain and Abel had a tragic conclusion: the first murder. Jubilees attributes the cause of their conflict to their offerings to God. Abel chose the finest animals from the firstborn of his flock, and God accepted this offering. Maybe a sign from heaven, like fire, consumed it. Yet Cain offered produce from the ground, and his offering did not please God similarly. This shows that for Jubilees, God
He probably gave God sour grapes.
evaluates the heart and the quality of the offering itself, not just the act of making an offering. Cain's heart became filled with envy and intense anger, and his face clearly showed his bitterness. Though God warned him about the danger of sin, Cain lured his brother Abel into the fields, where, out of jealousy, he killed him. Genesis offers fewer details about the inner workings of this conflict and God's warning. Jubilees, however, provides many more specifics about the consequences of this first murder on earth. This terrible deed The first death of an innocent received a clear response from God. Out of this event, Jubilees tells us, came a profoundly significant law for everyone, the first explicit command against murder. But this was no ordinary human law. Jubilees portrays it in a uniquely special way. It was a heavenly command, already written on the heavenly tablets even before creation began. A timeless decree from God, terribly broken by Cain. Genesis emphasizes the severity of Cain's act, but Jubilees highlights how deeply it violated an ancient, universal heavenly law. Although Genesis also speaks about a curse that Cain's murder brought upon the land, Jubilees greatly amplifies these consequences, revealing a deeper and lasting impact on creation itself. First, the earth itself became defiled. Abel's innocent blood, violently spilled by his brother, stained the ground. This pollution had direct, visible effects upon nature. For a long time, across many generations, the land did not bear good fruit as it had before.
Yeah.
Humanity's sin had diminished the earth's capacity to yield abundance.
Talia, it was raining, it was in Sydney, and he had no shoes on. He looked as pathetic as you possibly could. He looked like Russell Brand, a young version of Russell Brand. And he had a sign begging for money. And I remember walking up thinking, look at this poor bastard. I only had $5 in my wallet because I already had my train ticket. So I just gave him that $5. And then when I did, I felt like I was being watched.
But Jubilees sees an even deeper wound. The perfect order and lasting peace that God originally intended for his creation had been shattered by the arrival of violence. Violent death, driven by envy and anger, entered into the human world. It created division, a profound tear, not only between Cain and God, or between Cain and his own family, but also between humanity and the rest of creation. Sin had introduced a deep imbalance into the world, a disorder that disrupted the harmonious relationship God had originally designed between humanity and the natural environment entrusted to them. For this reason, Jubilees emphasizes that the consequences of Cain's sin were cosmic, not merely
Guys, you know how in the Old Testament they lived to 900 years old and things like that? I wonder, like, when they're 60, what do they look like? Do they still look like a toddler? And do they start getting like teenage years in when they're 250 years old? I wonder how that works.
Personal or familial. Secret 8, the divine cycles of 49 years. The Book of Jubilees places special emphasis on sabbatical years, which occur regularly every 7 years. The seventh day of every week is a sacred day of rest, directly connected to God's own rest during creation. But similarly, the seventh sabbatical year holds particular.
See, so God needs rest. God gets tired as well, and we're created in his image. So if we get tired, why wouldn't he?
During this sabbatical year,
I doubt he sleeps, though.
The Book of Jubilees teaches the land must rest completely. Fields must not be planted, nor vineyards pruned. You must not harvest the land in the usual way, seeking profit. It is a rest commanded by God for creation, a principle of profound respect for the earth he provided, which also needs time to recover. But the greater cycle, perhaps the most significant of all, is the Jubilee. It takes place after 7 cycles of 7 years. That is, after 49 years. The following year, the 50th year, is proclaimed as the Year of Jubilee, a very special season of freedom, restoration, and deep renewal for the entire community. One fascinating and demanding detail about this system was that the land not only rested during the 49th year, which was itself a sabbatical year, but it also rested during the 50th year, the Jubilee. This meant 2 consecutive years without sowing seed or harvesting organized crops. For the people, this was an enormous sacrifice and a tremendous test of faith. During the year of Jubilee,
something a little bit interesting. Glastonbury, which they do in England, it's a music festival. It's been held at the same place, and this is the 50th year that it's held. Last year was the 49th year it was held, so this year it'll be the 50th year, and they're not doing it in 2026 because they're getting the land time to recover. and that just happens to be in the Golden Jubilee that they're talking about. That's rather interesting because they're not going to do Glastonbury to give the land rest.
Extraordinary events would take place. Divine commands designed as a genuine economic and social reset, restoring justice and the original freedom of the people. Hebrew slaves, for instance, had to be set free. Regardless of how long they had served or why they had become enslaved, they were restored to freedom and permitted to return to their families. Moreover, debts were forgiven. This provided an opportunity for individuals and families to start anew, free from the heavy burden of old debts that they simply couldn't repay. And crucially, any
Talia, he had that hippie look that Russell Brand has. And he looked like Russell Brand as far as I can remember. But I don't think I knew who Russell Brand was then.
And that had been sold or lost due to debts was to return to the original clans and families. This prevented the permanent accumulation of land in the hands of just a few people. It preserved the family heritage that God had allotted to every tribe and family in Israel, maintaining a fairer society. These cycles of rest and redemption were not merely social or economic practices. According to the Book of Jubilees, they were fundamental divine laws, recorded, like all essential commandments, upon the heavenly tablets. Their purpose was both profound and multifaceted. They reminded Israel that God is the true owner of the land and of time itself. They also emphasized the values of justice and mercy, highlighting that it was necessary to periodically restore God's original intended order. Ignoring these sabbatical and jubilee years, Jubilees warns, would bring grave consequences. It would be seen as a direct rejection of the divine plan, resulting in punishments that would impact the entire nation. Penalties such as the loss of land or exile. Ninth secret: Enoch and the mathematical harmony of the Jubilees calendar. The calendar proposed in Jubilees is closely connected to the figure of Enoch. According to ancient traditions respected by Jubilees, Enoch himself received from angels the divine secrets concerning the sun, moon, and stars, and along with these, this perfectly organized calendar. Above all, the Jubilees calendar is remarkably ordered and symmetrical. It is built upon a year that lasts exactly 364 days. This number is neither random nor approximate. Rather, it divides evenly into 52 full weeks, without a single day left over or missing. Everything about this calendar underscores the importance of the number 7, a clear symbol of divine perfection and the completion of God's creation work. Each week, naturally, consists of 7 days. Moreover, the year is organized into 4 distinct seasons: spring, summer, autumn, and winter. Here comes another fascinating detail demonstrating its perfect regularity. Each of these 4 seasons lasts exactly 91 days. 91 days equal exactly 13 weeks. In this way, each quarter of the year always began on the same day of the week. In fact, an interesting detail is that...
And that's why they got rid of the Book of Jubilee, because it'll explain the timeline up to where we are now, I bet. I bet that's why it's not there.
Into the Jubilees system, the new year always started on a Wednesday. Wednesday corresponds to the 4th day of creation, the very day when, according to Genesis, God created the sun, moon, and stars. This had significant practical implications for religious life. All the major festivals, such as Passover, Pentecost, also known as the Feast of Weeks, and Tabernacles, fell each year on the exact same weekday. This removed all confusion or debate about when sacred occasions should be celebrated. This arrangement gave the calendar mathematical clarity and total predictability. It was very different from the lunar system used by other groups, and sometimes followed even by the temple in Jerusalem. The lunar calendar is harder to...
Not sometimes. The Jews were on the lunar calendar right up until recently.
Use for agricultural or solar years. It requires frequent adjustments, such as adding intercalary months to stay aligned with the seasons and the true solar cycle. Yet, the Book of Jubilees doesn't just present its calendar as simpler or more practical. It claims it to be the one true calendar divinely ordained by God. The book strongly warns about the consequences of abandoning it, stating that following a lunar calendar to set sacred festivals is a grave mistake. mistake. This would bring chaos and disorder into holy observances. Festivals would be celebrated on incorrect days, losing their true meaning and their connection to divine events. And the consequences of this error, Jubilees cautions, would be severe. It would lead to divine rejection, and God would turn away from those who disregard his heavenly calendar, one that was, according to the book, recorded on the celestial tablets. Although it was not the temple's official calendar during long periods, this 364-day system had many devoted followers. The Qumran community, the very group that left us the famous Dead Sea Scrolls, seems to have used a solar calendar extremely similar, if not identical, to this one. This would partly explain their profound separation from the practices of the Jerusalem temple. By following a different calendar, one they believed was the only legitimate one, they celebrated festivals and sacred days on entirely different dates. It was their way of declaring their purity and faithfulness to what they considered God's original instructions. Even more remarkable is how persistently this ancient calendar endured through the ages. It didn't vanish completely with the temple's destruction or the scattering of groups like the Qumran community. Indeed, it survives notably to this very day within the liturgy of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. There, aspects of this ancient system still determine certain significant dates and shape much of their liturgical calendar structure. The 10th secret, the hidden prophecy of Moses and the destiny of Israel. The Book of Jubilees presents a prophecy that's almost apocalyptic in nature, a sweeping vision of the future. This revelation was delivered to Moses by none other than the angel of the presence, the chief heavenly messenger who serves directly before God. This took place, according to the book, during those 40 days and 40 nights that Moses spent on the holy mountain. The angel clearly warned him about Israel's future apostasy. He foretold that the people of Israel would turn away from God and his sacred laws. As a direct result of this unfaithfulness and disobedience, divine punishment would come. The angel spoke about exile. The people would be taken far from the promised land and scattered among the nations. And with deep sorrow, the angel announced the future destruction of the temple in Jerusalem. The holy place where God had chosen to set his name would be profaned and reduced to ruins. These announcements closely resemble the warnings and lamentations made by biblical prophets such as Jeremiah or Ezekiel. They too spoke about exile and the fall of the temple as consequences of Israel's sins. But the prophecy did not end here. The prophecy in Jubilees described coming times of great evil upon the earth, perhaps periods when the power and influence of Mastema and his evil spirits would rise alarmingly. Severe judgments would fall not only upon Israel, but also upon the sinners and oppressive nations who had risen against God's plan. This recalls passages from the book of Daniel or the book of Enoch, which describe times of great tribulation. It would be a period of intense testing, a purification by fire, for the faithful few who remained. Theologically, this apocalyptic material emphasizes the gravity of the conflict between good and evil, and the urgent need for decisive divine intervention to restore order. Yet, the extensive vision given to Moses did not end in darkness and despair. After a long period marked by punishment and suffering for sinful actions, the angel revealed a promise of final redemption. God, in his mercy, would not abandon his people forever. A genuine time of repentance would eventually come, a heartfelt return to God's law and covenant. With that renewal, a new era of restoration and blessing would begin. This prophecy closely parallels the visions described in the New Testament book of Revelation, which also speaks about a new Jerusalem and the complete eradication of evil. The book of Jubilees describes a future where God would create a new heaven and a new earth, dwelling with his people in everlasting holiness and peace, and where the temple would be renewed and remain perfect forever. If you found this exploration of the book of Jubilees intriguing, get ready, because the Bible itself contains plenty of strange passages as well, passages that many readers prefer to skip over since they feel confusing or troubling. Click on the video linked on your screen to discover these strange biblical passages, their explanations, and other amazing secrets.
Okay. Hang on. Hang on. Hang on. Come here. Jump.
The FBI, the NSA, and the CISA have all come out and said the FBI, the NSA, and the CISA have all come out and said that we're already under this heightened threat alert, and that cities are on this list, that we're looking at these vulnerabilities that are going to be major targets, which we're going to give you those cities as all this is playing out as we speak right now. They're saying Iranian cyber actors may target U.S. networks and entities of interest. You can see this came out on the official website, United States government, of the CISA. Other than that, we've had international drills that happened inside the United States before all this was even spoken of by the U.S. military, which they call Cyber Yankee, which we will show what's happening on that front and how they're going to be using specific lines during this downward of networks. And it also talks about what type of networks that could be down. And speaking of that, we'll give you each city where this is happening at, and specifically why these cities have this happening.
Yeah, I haven't done it for a while, have I, Talia? If you next stream you show up, let me know about him because I forget. And if you remind me, I'll play him last. I usually play the guys who've got political info last because that's the most important info. That's how I try to do it.
As well, so you're going to want to tune in and listen to everything I have to say on this note. Just recently, Iran military is preparing for a new attack against Israel. And so everything is basically wrapping up around this scenario. They've also just threatened to release 100 gigabytes of Trump's aides' emails, sounding like they have started to get into a cyber scenario. Now, on the other side of all the officiality coming out, we also had something that wasn't really spoken about, and it's that this agency here, China-backed lapdog hackers, hijacked hundreds of devices in outlandish intel campaign aimed at U.S. and Asian targets. And again, apparently they were using some type of law enforcement thing to make it look like they were using those servers. But let's read a little bit here what they say in this target situation and what can be happening. They even released a video, and definitely got to watch for when these people start releasing stuff, because you know how it is. I'm going to read some of this for you here. This is what's the target. Defense industrial base companies, particularly those processing holdings or relationships with Israeli research and defense firms, are at risk. At the time, we have not seen indications yet, but they're saying that potentially the U.S. networks are vulnerable. The joint fact sheet need for increased vigilance for potential cyber attacks against U.S. critical infrastructure by Iranian state-sponsored affiliated threat actors. And that's just one of the pieces of what they're saying here. You can see a lot of different things play out. Now on the target list of what cities, the FBI shifted its resources to major U.S. cities, come out from News Nation, and they prepared. So this kind of tells us domestically where they're actually looking for this to happen. This shows us where the ramp up is. And in your location, we're going to look right now and tell you exactly what's going on. First of all, before we get to it, Las Vegas was one of the first pieces, which they said we could see a scenario play out kind of like we saw when the casinos got hacked and then everything was down. Then they're saying that a second phase of that could play out over the next coming weeks and even months. Now, I'm going to give you this right now about the areas that the major ramp up was on. So let's read this right here. Major cities across the United States have ramped up security efforts in case of potential cells or sleepers, cyber attacks from Iran. They are getting the FBI assistance. The FBI is reportedly shifting resources in these cities right here. So take a listen, because you might be in some of these areas.
In season, Australian citrus. Picked for you by the fresh food people.
Shifting resources in New York City, Los Angeles, Chicago, Philadelphia, and basically these are the areas that they're really ramping up all their resources at. It also says the HC has also told field offices to be in close communication with the Department of Defense and National Guard too, because military sites could be targeted as well. And guess what? The FBI did not comment on operational decisions. They can't tell us what they're going to be doing. How do you trust that one? Now, I'm going to move you into the reason that they are in these potential locations inside the United States. You can look right here. The persistent threats here, they've already known all these areas. So even though you're not mentioned on some of these lists, this Homeland Security Committee, this was released a while ago where they were talking about this. So Texas, Florida, Arizona, Oklahoma, Kansas, Ohio, Virginia, North Carolina, still not out of that neck of the woods. And also the Chinese farmland is also right along those same areas. So even though we're focusing on just what they're saying, we just got to realize that it could be a lot more to this scenario. Now, this is what the CISA released. You can see this right here if you look on screen. They released this right here. They're showing you what could be attacked, and all these are the potential things. And you barely can even see some of those. And so we're going to look at that a little bit closer here. But here it is right here. They're showing you specifically what the targets are going to look like, and then we're going to look back at something to see what else they just said, because it was something that we really need to look at. So we got food, agriculture, education, healthcare, water, critical infrastructure, transportation, energy. So you'll be thinking about that. How can they be hitting transportation over these next coming weeks or months? And remember, all this is a lot.
Didn't Jesus say the Sabbath was for man, not man for the Sabbath? In other words, the Sabbath was created for man.
Long-term plan.
Pretty sure he said that somewhere.
Something that they've been planning for, preparing for. And we've been talking about all the different ins and outs of the power grid scenarios. We found out.
Oh man, you're trying on the freaking remote again.
We found out that there was a component
specifically. Go on.
And here's the images now that we're here talking about. So I'm gonna show you what we missed here in just a second. But
don't
some
sit
of the
there. I'm
scenarios
talking my tablet
here at hand, and we've seen some of the things that could be possibly underway. So check this out. They're also saying chemical. If you look at the top left, you got chemical could be hacked. That'd be bad because again, you get a release in the atmosphere, so you prepare yourself a gas mask wherever you need. Commercial facilities, communications, critical manufacturing, dams, so your waterways, it could be interrupted. Defense industrial bases, emergency services. Don't look for emergency service to be there all the time, have your own stuff, and the best thing that I've got, even when I had an open wound, is basically those bandages, the liquid bandages. I had a whole cut right here. You can see kind of like right here. It was like this open, but I would use a liquid bandage. My woman helped me use something to hold it closed. And then actually I close up all the wound. Most people get stitches for that. So you need to think about stuff like that. Energy, financial services. So financial services, another huge one. Food and agriculture. You say, well, how would they mess with that critical infrastructure? Through the biological scenarios, potentially. Government facilities, healthcare, nuclear reactors, materials, and waste. So all of this is on the table here in the CISA scenario. And then later I'm gonna write something down that you should look up because some other stuff that's going on as well. Somebody says Gator prison open today. I seen them talking about the Gators and stuff. Trump said something about he wanted the Gators on the border and DeSantis. Now, I'm gonna bring something up here in just a second.
At Custom Timber, we use Qantas Business Rewards to earn Qantas points on fuel and credit card spend, to then put towards regular flights to Asia and Europe, where we source quality timber and core. It's been a great money saver for our business.
Welcome to the Institute.
But let's go into Cyber Yankee now, because this was done a little bit before all of this. But before we go into that, let's just take a look at what somebody sent me here. And this is fire you can see on a power pole. It doesn't matter if you're in the United States, it doesn't matter if you're in the UK. We've seen these transformers, we've seen these substations going up in flames. In the last week, we probably had over 10 to 11, 12 of them, 13, 14, 15 of them just sparking.
Wow, and that's why they're saying the grid will go down on the 4th or the 5th. They've already set it in motion. Wow, guys.
All at once. And we talked to people who was major power grid companies saying like, well, they only do that if oil leaks. And then
what just happened?
I'm just loading that for later, guys. Sorry.
And then we learned that there was a component inside of this from the CISA that was vulnerable to attack. And we did a video on that. You can check that out. I'll have a link to it after this is over. But that video was talking about the grid explosions, and we exposed that scenario. So now moving into Cyber Yankee, because the military did this while a lot of people wouldn't notice. This was just like literal couple weeks back. And what they did is they were looking at a huge scenario of the utilities being down. I'm going to read to you exactly what they were looking at, though. So while you're looking at this, let's go ahead and tell you. So this is from the website afmc.af military news. This is the Air Force website. And this exercise was to strengthen regional resilience across New England. This was an international drill. And it was held at Cross Training Complex in New Hampshire in May. The event brought together military, cyber defense, and civilian agencies. Utility companies was there too, interestingly enough, and industry partners to respond to simulated cyber attacks targeting critical infrastructure. Now, it says the highlighted value of integrating operational technology, operators, municipal utilities, the Army, and Air National Guard members into the exercise environment. Appreciate that super chat. So they were looking at utility companies.
That's a coincidence. I got Disney and Prime Plus put on yesterday. My subscriptions ran out, and one of the movies I was going to look at was it's not a movie, it's a series, Van Helsing, and it looked like an eight seasons show. And I think Van Helsing's a girl in it. I'm not sure, but I saw that last night on social.
Is going down. They were looking at all these different scenarios. I'm gonna let you see on screen when I read here, because this is the confirmed website.
Oh, come on, man! I'm sick of
the Air Force Base, and they hosted this. I'm gonna read down here at the bottom half of the section so you can see it. Efforts are underway to develop collaborative roadmap through 2028. So they're looking at this to be something long term, and improving simulation, integrating advanced tools, fostering continuous cyber readiness. This exercise aims to direct installations mission to support community and mission partners, said Colonel Giancarlo of the 66th Air Base Group Information Protection Officer. He says, we look forward to partnering with Massachusetts Guard and others to advance the state cyber defenses regionally. And
Tally, I think it was on Prime Plus. I'm not sure. It was either that or Netflix.
Cyber Yankee remains a leading example of integrated defenses, bridging gaps between military, government, and private sector partners to secure critical infrastructure in an increasingly contested digital environment. Because this is the future, and this is where all the warfare is going to be waged at as we see this coming on down the line. Now, here's the other scenario that you need to look into here, is that Cyber 9 line is what they're going to be looking at. Cyber 9 line is going to be a crisis communication system And they say the ultimate goal is to provide mutual support to each other. So this is going to be their line they got to activate when stuff is down. And they say the U.S. Armed Forces will use this for medical evacuation or closed air support. And here's the thing. We got a map. They put a map.
Metrocon's Big Love Sales Event. Save up to $75,000 on selected Metrocon home designs. Metrocon's Big Love Sales Event. Save big before it's gone.
They put a map on here, which is kind of ominous. I want to see what y'all think. So it's like, I know it's a regional map, but it's just kind of like, you know, it gives you ideas when you look at it. Let's look at this. Cyber 9 line is a template of questions that participating National Guard units use to quickly communicate a cyber incident. Also a cyber attack as well. So check it out right here. So it says graphic depicting incident data flow, the use of Cyber 9 line with the template questions, quickly communicate cyber incident, U.S. Cybercom, the data provided enables the Cyber National Mission Force to further diagnose a foreign attack and provide timely unclassified feedback to the unit who shares with state and county governments to address cyber incident. There's a big 5. Let's look at the full map of this. We got to see the full map of this. I'm pretty sure y'all want to see the full layout. All right, y'all, here's the full layout. So what we got here is you can see an arrow coming from like the Middle East. It says impose costs, and then it has another arrow going into the United States. It says generate insights, enable defense, cyber incident response. And you can see a big 9 right there. And on that 9, you also see this big, huge red thing. So I'm not sure if that's one of their base cyber command centers. Or if anybody else know about that, put it in the comments. A lot of people smart here. Then they got a 5 here on the East Coast, and that's by DC. So this kind of lining up where I can see the 5 being DC.
Talia, that's programming you for the mark.
And then the 9 is like probably another regional center. And then it's another one in California, it looks like. And then one looks like it's down there by Latin America. So these could be response centers that they're looking at using with this cyber incident response. Now something happening on soil that's like really strange. And it kind of alludes to the, you know, let me write this down because most of the time you say stuff and it triggers stuff. Give me a second. I'm gonna write it down so you can go look this up for sure, because this is being built on soil. Hold up. And it's by the same agencies we're talking about. And I can't say that. Hold up, wait, I'm gonna write something down. I don't know if you're gonna be able to see this, so I gotta try to write it backwards. Let's see what we can do there. So look that up. I don't know if did y'all see what I just put up? Because this happening in Florida, and apparently it's happening in Carson, the DHS. It says Camp Otterberry. Did y'all see that? And this reminds me of, you know, the old scenario we've been talking about for years. And I can't say it because obviously if I say stuff, I'm going to trigger something. But I'm citing all the sources to these, all the official sources will be in the video right after this is over with. And I just want to see. Somebody says, do again. All right, hold up. So I guess you can read it the first time. So if you couldn't read it, say, I could read it. If you couldn't, then say, I couldn't. So let's try to do this again. This time I'll make it bigger, as a matter of fact. So.
Okay, guys, he's out in 1 minute. He's out in 1 minute, guys. I'm out now. God bless. See you tomorrow. I'm doing a Russ Disdale one tomorrow.
It was straight.
The Black Awakening.
I thought it was backwards. This one.